Go for it.
Is it working? Are we all good?
Welcome, everybody. We're going to give it a second. We know a lot of folks are joining. I'm seeing that number just climb and climb and climb. Today is a good day because student debt has been canceled. So we're just going to give it 1 second for folks to join in. Wow. All right. I'm so glad we increased the Zoom. We're almost 1,000 folks. All right. So it is 10 o'clock here on the West Coast, 1 o'clock on the East Coast. I'm Natalia Abrams. I am the president here at Student Debt Crisis Center. We have a jam-packed show for you today, but most importantly, we are here today because we canceled student debt. So everyone please clap, give yourself a round of applause. It's because of you all that we keep doing this. Amazing. We also are here to celebrate 10 years of Student Debt Crisis Center, but I kind of always felt, who cares about your birthday? This is really about you and our canceled student debt win. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to who you all want to hear from, which is the majority leader, Senator Schumer, who has been a tireless champion for this. Senator Schumer is just unbelievably dedicated, cares about this issue. And Senator Schumer, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for helping us take this over the finish line. If it wasn't for you and Senator Warren, Representative Presley and Omar and everyone on the Hill helping us advocates and borrowers make sure this happened, it wouldn't have happened. So this is your win too. Thank you so much, Senator.
Well, thank you, Natalia. Thank you for the great work you do. I want to thank the Student Debt Crisis Center. What a great way to celebrate a 10th anniversary. Let's make the 11th and 12th and 13th even better because we got more to do, but we got a lot to celebrate right now. I want to thank Move On, and I want to thank the Student Borrower Protection Center, the Young Invincibles, and the National Consumer Law Center, all of you for the great work you've done. And let me just say, what a milestone. If there's one word that can describe what we did together as a team, it would be persistence. We never gave up. There were good moments, there were bad moments, but we knew how important this is, how the burden of debt was hanging so heavily on tens of millions of people's shoulders, and how we had an obligation as a country to do something about it. And so on your shoulders has been a cause that's been so near and dear to my heart. Ever since in 2002, I authored a proposal, the American Opportunity Tax Credit, that people could reduce the amount of money that they paid for debt. Because I just met with people on the street. Wherever I go, people would tell me their stories about how difficult it was to wake up in the middle of the night and think, how am I going to pay that $400 this month? To wake up and think, how am I going to start a career or get married or buy a car or do whatever because of this huge burden? Well, today we can finally say to all of you on this Zoom, as well as the leaders of these great organizations, your persistence has paid off. After years of hard work, groups like you, President Biden announced he's canceling significant amounts of student debt. I always said, with the flick of a pen, he could do it. Well, his pen flicked yesterday, and he did it. He's eased the crushing burden of student loan debt for tens of millions of Americans, and we've got to keep going. So I want to thank my colleagues, Senator Warren, Congressman Presley, Senator Warnock, and all of you who pushed so hard to act, because now tens of millions of Americans are breathing easier. The president's decision is simply a BFD, to quote a former vice president I've known. It's going to do more good for more people than anything previously done on student debt. Rather than helping the privileged few, it's going to lift up Americans from all walks of life, students of color, poor Americans, children of immigrants, working middle-class families like the one I came from will all benefit. In fact, the president's action is going to provide relief to 43 million borrowers and is going to just wipe out the debt altogether of 20 million borrowers. 27 million borrowers will receive up to $20,000 in cancellation. Elizabeth and I and Raphael and Ayana worked so hard in the last few weeks to convince the president to add this proposal on those who have Pell Grants, and it's going to work. And it's determined when you got the Pell, if you got a Pell Grant, even if your income's higher now, you're still going to get the 20,000, and it's going to mean more than half the people who get relief are going to get the 20,000, not the 10,000. And let me say something else: 90% of debt that's being canceled goes to borrowers who earn less than 75,000 a year. Repeat that for all the naysayers who say, "Oh, this is a rich person's thing." It sure as hell isn't. 90% of debt being canceled goes to borrowers earning less than 75,000 a year. And the majority of student loans, listen to this, folks, are held by people whose families have zero net worth. So much for the BS that the right wing and others put out that says, oh, this is going to wealthy people who don't need it. BS. They should just walk down the streets of New York or any other state in the country and listen to people's stories. And so here are two other things. Aside from the 10 and 20,000, two other things people should know. The other programs that have been on the books but haven't worked are now going to change. The monthly payments for the IDR program, of discretionary income, is going to be capped at 5%, not 10%, that the borrowers pay right now. And the debt will be canceled in 10 years, not 20. So that helps people who still have debt. And furthermore, it's going to be much easier to subscribe to these programs. It was so complicated, hardly anyone did. The goal the president has told us is that you can go online, say a few things, and then get it to happen immediately, that 5% cap. There's also the public service loan forgiveness program for so many of you who work in government and for nonprofits. It applies to nonprofits too. That's a lot of people. Well, that's going to be expanded and simplified so you can go online and get this done quickly. So these are all monumental improvements. I am on cloud nine thinking of this victory. No president or Congress has done more to relieve the burden of student debt, and it's because of you, your great persistence. The life-changing win is yours. For every single one of you who signed petitions, letters, called the president, reached out to policymakers, attended rallies, town halls, this is for you. And we are so proud, Senators Warnock and Warren and I and Congressmember Presley, in pushing the president to go as big as possible. But I want to make sure you know that there's going to be more to do. We are not done yet. As Natalia said, we're not going to rest till all of student debt is wiped out. But this makes it easier now that it's been done and it's seen as so popular, as you've seen just in the last few days. It's going to make it easier to move forward. I'm going to conclude by telling a little story that reminds me of what we have done here. My dad passed away in November, and he would have been 99. He would have been 99 on Flag Day, June 14th. He didn't have a great life. He had this junky little exterminating business. He hated it, didn't want to go to work any day. It was such a difficult little business. He never complained. He never even envied people. He was a very bright man, but could never fulfill that brightness and go to college. He never complained. He never resented people better than him. And for those of you who've lost parents, some of you may know the feeling. My dad is still sitting here, right here next to me, because he taught me two values above all. Always help people who need help. That's the most noble thing you can do. And second, he said to me, if you're doing the right thing and you persist, you don't give up, you can make society a better place. You can make the world a better place. That is what you have done. You've helped people who have needed help, and you have persisted and never given up. And now the world is a better place. So thank you for your good work. Thank the great leadership of our organizations. Thank the membership who rallied. And this is not our last call together. We got more work to do. Together, we will have future successes. On to victory. And now it's on to further victories. It's now my I had a great partner in all this, and that's Elizabeth Warren. She is brilliant. She is also persistent. She also does the right thing all the time. We have been a great team when we started this 2 years ago, by the way, before Biden became president. He invited me to his house in Delaware and say, now that you're majority leader, what should we get done? And one of the first things I said is student debt. Took a little while, but here we are. And without Elizabeth and her brilliance, her persistence, this wouldn't have gotten done. So I'm going to sign off, but thank Elizabeth and all of you for your great work. This is a great victory. On to even greater ones. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader Schumer. You know, when we talk about success has many mothers. We have to remember that there were people who, if they hadn't been part of this and hadn't fought and hadn't persisted, we wouldn't be where we are today. And that truly is Leader Schumer. He has been a relentless partner on student debt from day one. And all I can say to everyone on this call is Chuck has really been in there. He's been in there quietly sometimes. He's been in there noisily sometimes. He's plotted. He's thought about what we can do over and over and over. And at any point, it wasn't just, let's get something done and check off the box. It's how can we get the maximum amount to help the most people? How can we do this? I get calls from Chuck. Listen, you get calls from Chuck. I get calls from Chuck early in the morning, late at night. Did you read so-and-so? How about if we use that and go back and talk to so-and-so, maybe we can get them pulled in. It just, I can't say it enough. I can't say it loudly enough or publicly enough. Chuck Schumer is a big part of how we made it here today. And I also have to say, so have others. Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, just amazing, all the way in, right from the beginning. Senator Raphael Warnock, right there in the Oval Office, saying, Mr. President, here's what we've got to do, and here's why. And all of you, I'm here to celebrate, and I'm here to celebrate because we are reducing the student loan debt burden, but I'm also here to celebrate because you've made democracy work. We have taken an idea that not everybody was on board, a lot of people didn't understand it, and we have driven it forward. So happy birthday. What a great time, SDCC, to have this. Just perfect, Natalia. I'm so glad to have a chance to be here with all of you. This could not have come at a more perfect time because we have a lot to celebrate today. So I just start by thinking about what President Biden did. He made the historic decision to cancel a big chunk of student debt for 43 million Americans. That's 95% of all the borrowers in the country. Now look, do I wish he had canceled more debt? Absolutely. But think about this. This morning, 20 million people woke up, and for the first time in their adult lives, they have no student loan debt. And 23 million more people woke up, and for the first time in a very long time, they actually have some relief on their student loan debts. They have moved down. And one more that we can't forget. This morning, millions more parents and kids who dream of going to college, people who are thinking about going back to school, learned that the student loan system might actually work for them going forward. Now, make no mistake, this is going to transform the lives of working people all across this country. It's going to advance racial justice. Black borrowers are twice as likely to have relied on Pell Grants to go to school than their white counterparts. They are also twice as likely to get $20,000 of their student loan debt canceled under the Biden plan. Look, what the president has announced is going to help us rebuild America's middle class. Borrowers of color, mamas and daddies who tried their luck are now and have gone back to school are going to see that debt forgiven. First generation college students, veterans, these are people for whom taking on college debt was a huge risk. And by giving them double the cancellation amount, we're helping make the playing field just a little more level. None of this would have happened without SDCC. Over the last decade, Natalia and Cody and SDCC have truly been in the trenches, building the movement that has made student debt cancellation a possibility and now a reality for tens of millions of families. They did this by putting the spotlight on the stories of real people who have been crushed by student debt, people for whom the debt has led them to struggle to provide for their families or has held them back from starting a family or left them unable to save for retirement, or they couldn't start a small business, they couldn't save for a home, all the things about building a secure future going forward. The stories you have told are so powerful, and they helped inspire millions of Americans to join the fight to help us cancel student loan debt. And so for that, SDCC, I am so grateful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This victory belongs to you, and it belongs to the thousands of other organizers who have put in years of unbelievably hard work to get us here. 10 years ago, when you all first got started, I suspect there were very few people in Washington, D.C. who were willing even to give you the time of day. But yesterday, the President of the United States paid attention and canceled a big chunk of student debt. That is extraordinary. Now, like Chuck said, our work is not over. We need to fight to make sure that every person who is eligible for cancellation gets their relief. We don't want this out there and people don't actually take advantage of it. We also need to keep working to hold schools and loan servicers accountable. We need to ensure that no one is at risk of being crushed by student debt ever again. All of those are the work we still have to do. We are going to have many more calls together. But right now, at this moment, on this day, just take a little breather to reflect on how much you've achieved with yesterday's announcement. I was making phone calls just before I got on this to thank a lot of my folks on my team who've been in this fight for a very long time. And one of them told me she was out to dinner last night and that she's having dinner and she hears the waiter at the next table over visiting with someone, and he said he had heard that there was going to be cancellation of up to $20,000 of student loan debt. But he didn't know if it was real and he wasn't sure, and had they heard anything? Well, she was eavesdropping, heard the rest of the conversation, and she called him over, talked to him, walked him through it, figured out that he was going to have all of his debt canceled out, and he started to cry. Because that's what it means to people. You've made this happen. You have raised your voices. You have stayed in the trenches to improve people's lives. I am so grateful for your work because without it, we would not be here today. So thank you for all you've done over the last 10 years. We're going to stay in this fight because we're going to keep up. And we are going to make sure that we are here for the people who need us. Congratulations. What a great day.
Yeah, Cody, I cheers for it. Thank you, Senator. And you have been one of the early champions. I still remember meeting with you in 2013 when you were trying to pass 0% interest rate, and you have never given up. And I know you are going to stay on this. And I keep saying this is a we moment, not an I moment. So thank you for thanking us, but it's our job to make sure everyone else is thanked for this because it's unity that got us here.
Yep.
So thank you. And Cody too, our fearless executive director, thank you for being here. So thank you, Senator.
Yes.
Cody.
Yeah, thank you so much, Senator. I am also very emotional. I can see it on many of our faces. It is a big day. I appreciate you, Senator, for saying that we should celebrate this moment. We should. Let's take a moment to have a win, and we will continue to fight. So thank you for the kind words. I have the honor of being thanked by Senator Warren, but now I have the great privilege of talking about the borrowers, our supporters, who've really gotten us to this point. And we're going to hear from their voices in just a few minutes. I just want to say, today was going to be our 10-year anniversary event, and in some ways it still is. But by great chance and luck, we have the biggest victory of the past decade of advocacy happen yesterday. A lot has changed over the last 10 years. I remember our early work together. I started working with Student Debt Crisis Center about 8 years ago. And, we would spend a lot of time just trying to get lawmakers to know that there was a problem. And I remember our team, we would huddle together late at night if there was a debate or a special event, and we would hope that anyone in Washington, D.C. would just say the word student loan debt. And we just kept chipping away at it. And we had our supporters here to continue to drive us, to echo so that we could echo their voices and to kind of guide our work. It's been a great privilege. So while so much has changed, what has been the great constant has been all of you that are watching today, our borrowers. And I'm thinking about some borrowers that we mentioned earlier today in a press conference that shared their stories with us. But we have Casey from Arkansas, whose husband is unable to work right now due to complications with COVID. And their budget was so tight. They were so afraid because of the student loan payments resuming at the end of this month. Now they know that their payments are on pause and they're actually going to get permanent relief. That is a story that resonates with me. And just to share one more, there are thousands, but we have Annie from Montana as well, who wanted to send their child to college. And, Senator Schumer, I was personally touched by his comments about, his father and his academic journey. Annie from Montana is one of those parents whose child has a dream to go to college and get an education. And they had to tell them no because they couldn't afford it. That is something that will change today because, like Senator Warren said, we maybe have a future in which everyone feels like the system works and we can all actually achieve our dreams and we won't be crushed by student debt. Now, it's not all fixed right now this second. We have so much more work to do, and that's why we're here. We must continue to fight for the borrowers, for people like me and you, for the audience here today that are still going to have student loan debt tomorrow. So before we start a panel and actually hear from borrowers who are live with us today, I just want to share a video that, frankly, we prepared a few weeks ago before we had this big announcement. We partnered with our good friends at Move On to collect dozens of stories from borrowers. And we put them together in a video. And I'm going to play this video. And I just want to say, these are the voices of people whose lives have changed today. And these are also the voices of people who will still have student loan debt and we're going to continue to fight for. We all have a different experience. We're all looking at today's big victory through a different lens. And so with that, why don't I share the borrowers' voices directly and save some space for those that we're fighting for.
And away on commencement day meant I had a diploma in one hand and an invoice for a six-figure student loan debt in the other.
The loan was originally a $24,000 loan. Currently, I owe over $45,000, and I've been paying it off for about 6 years now.
I've paid $103 on an $82,000 debt, and you still want $45,000. That's money that I can't put toward retirement.
My student loan, it's not coming down, it's going up.
My debt started off at $33,000. It is now somewhere closer to $200,000.
I probably will be paying them till I'm 80 years old at this point.
Graduated in 1998 with $29,000 of student loan debt. This year, my student loan debt has accumulated to almost $52,000 after paying on it all these years.
I was able to get rid of this debt. It would set me up for a more successful future.
Cancel all student debt. Let us do the financial contributions to our economy that we want to do, that we're trying to do.
President Biden, we need help. 10,000 is not going to do it.
You bailed out people with money, you bailed out the big banks, but you won't bail out the everyday person such as myself.
Wow, thank you for that, Cody. That is such an incredible video. and extremely powerful. Hi everyone, my name is Orlando Caballo. I'm the Bar Outreach Coordinator with the Student Debt Crisis Center and a fourth year undergraduate student at the University of California, Riverside. At SDCC, the voices of borrowers and the stories of everyday folks have been at the center of our work since the organization started over a decade ago. Meeting with everyday folks nationwide and amplifying their voices has been an honor and incredibly powerful tool toward the movement to cancel student debt. And because of you, President Biden made a big dent in the student debt crisis yesterday. And with your voice and your strength, we can put an end to student debt permanently. Now, I'd like to introduce our Director of Borrower Outreach, Sabrina Calazans, who leads key efforts to uplift and amplify the voices of countless borrowers nationwide.
Thanks, Orlando. Hi, everyone. Thanks again for joining us today. And as a New Yorker and a student loan borrower, it's so great to have had Senator Schumer and Senator Warren joining us today. They have been passionate advocates and dedicated to this issue, and I'm so grateful for them. Every day I have the opportunity to speak to student loan borrowers and hear their stories, and I know that this decision is going to impact many lives, including my own. Today I heard from someone that we all do better when we all do better, and I believe that that is the case in this scenario. A lot of us are going to be doing better because of President Biden's decision to cancel student debt. But we know that this fight must continue, and it's not done today. Although today is a day of celebration, tomorrow is a day of organizing and fighting to continue canceling student debt until every single dollar is canceled. But today, I'm really glad to be joined by some student loan borrowers that I've had the pleasure of speaking to over the years. So on our borrower panel today, we have Lenice McCalla, who's from Yonkers, New York. She's a single mother to a 10-year-old child and a recent college graduate. She understands what it's like to make those minimum monthly payments only to have her student loan balance continue to grow. We're also joined by Dr. Brian Harnsberger, who is a borrower and a licensed psychologist in the state of Massachusetts. After his best friend died by suicide in his undergrad, he took out loans to attend graduate school to learn the skills needed to provide support to people experiencing mental health crises. During the loan pause, he founded a group private practice in the town of Wellesley, Massachusetts, just outside of Boston, specializing in treating college-age students and adults. And finally, we're joined by Carly McCarthy, who's a queer filmmaker based in the Bay Area, who centers the lives of the LGBTQ community. She has spent the last 8 years working everywhere from big Hollywood movie sets to the halls of Congress. She's interned in Bernie Sanders' Senate office in 2017, where she got her start in creating media for progressive causes. During the pandemic, she started a small video production company that specializes in this. Carly has about $35,000 of individual student debt, but her family carries close to $500,000 collectively. So thank you all for joining us today and for being willing to share your stories. We would love to hear your stories, but obviously with this cancellation announcement, I'd love to get your initial reactions to the president's announcement yesterday. So I'd love to toss it to Lenice first. Lenice, we know that Black women are disproportionately impacted by student loan debt. So what is your initial reaction to President Biden's decision yesterday?
It's surreal. It's surreal. And now I'm thinking, okay, I don't have to juggle anymore. I now can take care of what I need to take care of in a timely manner. It is just surreal right now.
And, if you feel comfortable sharing how much student loan debt you have or how much, if you're going to benefit from this decision, I know that for some people it'll clear their debt, or for some it might almost clear their debt. So what does this look like for you?
So I guess I did do the good math. It will clear most of my debt. And when I tell you I did such a jig, I'm like, wait a minute, let me carry the one, add the two. I'm like, yes, yes. And it's just amazing. And I just want to say that not everyone, but so many people are saying, well, this is a handout. It's not a handout, it's a hand up. And we all once in a while need that. So I'm not going to forget this. I'm not going to squander this time. But in this time, I'm going to make sure I handle what I need to handle. So surreal, thankful, grateful, especially for you, because Sabrina is like a pit bull. Every time I looked at my emails, I got Sabrina. I'm like, Sabrina, so, and Natalia, all, you guys have been amazing through all of this. So it's my daughter, I think I was sharing with you before, my daughter was able to go to camp. I didn't have to worry about paying for, robbing Peter to pay Paul. My oldest daughter graduated John Jay. Yes, we did it. My nephew, I was telling him also, he's listening live as well. This is just a hand up for us. So I'm ecstatic.
That's so great. And I'm going to toss it next to Dr. Brian, if he'd like to share his initial reaction and how this decision will impact his life, if it will or if it won't.
So I'm going to share several different reactions from a ton of different hats that I'm wearing. First, as a psychologist, I honestly think we need to really recognize this. The fact that this policy that has just been implemented is going to save lives. Financial stress and hopelessness are killers. Biden literally provided a lifeline to some people today. And from a clinical aspect, it's already rolling in. I'm starting to meet with student borrowers that are feeling reinvigorated about their decision to go to school. They're talking about, having hope coming out of school. And me, I'm a new parent. Here's my little boy. Come on, clear out. He's the cutest little boy in the world. And I'm feeling really, really hopeful about his education. I have to say, during pregnancy and like as he's born and as he continues to grow up and show me all these amazing new tricks that he does, that I'm feeling very comfortable in what higher education has to offer, and that I'm not going to be hamstrung, paying my student loans and then, hop into Parent Plus loans or trying to figure out what retirement looks like, sandwiched between all these different loans. And then finally, as a student borrower myself, this doesn't affect me right now because most of my loans are Grad Plus loans, and this didn't address it. But it's a we issue, and today is one of celebration. And we were able to make all these radical changes to undergraduate, and there's absolutely no reason why we can't do that with graduate loans as well. So I'm very, very hopeful with what's going on. I do see this policy as a tourniquet. And what I'm really hoping is that we can tie it up, make the changes that are fundamental and necessary before the tourniquet becomes useless. So, celebrate today, absolutely, back to work tomorrow, because we really, really need to get moving on these fundamental and radical changes.
Definitely. Today, I was fortunate to come to DC and join other advocates and college students, thanking the president, but also alerting him to the fact that we will continue fighting. We know that this is just the beginning of a huge battle against the student loan system, but there's a lot of work left to be done. But we're more fired up than ever to see this result and seeing how many people are going to be impacted. Just the thought that 20 million people will have their debt completely cleared is life-changing and a historic moment. And so we're really grateful for that, but we have not forgotten about you and other people who are not having full relief right now. So I'd love to toss it to Carly and hear your initial reaction as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Sabrina. And thank you for having me. It's great to chat alongside other borrowers and hear your story too. Makes me feel, less alone in this fight. I'm thrilled right now. I'm just letting myself, even though it's not completely solving my student debt problems and my family's student debt problems, this is such a big deal. And I'm just letting myself completely take in what this movement has been able to accomplish. I think it's so important to do that when it's been such a struggle day in and day out with not the wins that we want to see up until right now. For me, I have $35,000 in individual student loan debt. I was a Pell Grant recipient, so I'm going to have $20K knocked off of that. So that is major, major, major. Unfortunately, as Sabrina said when she introduced me, my family collectively, between me, my mom, my dad, and my sister, have about $500,000 in household student loan debt. A lot of that, or the majority of it, is private loans that my sister has. But another big chunk of it is Parent Plus loans that my mom and my dad have. And so, 10K on the 150 or so that my mom has is something, but, not a huge dent. I'll take it. But I think something I want to keep exploring and understand is the new income driven repayment plans and the interest cap. When I read that last night, I was so kind of like enthralled with the news about the cancellation that I didn't see that part of the policy change at first. So I'm really excited about that. And I feel hopeful that this is one big step in the right direction. And if we can get Biden to do this, imagine what we can do when, we have more people on our side in the Senate and Congress as this movement grows. If we can do this with such a slim majority, and, with a president that was kind of on the fence and taking a really long time to get to where we are now, imagine what we can do with somebody that is a total champion of this. And I'm really hopeful in that. And so I'm taking in all the good feels today.
Yeah, definitely a win and a moment of celebration. And, as a relatively very young person, how do you feel your peers might be feeling in this moment about this announcement for student debt cancellation?
Yeah, there's a lot of mixed emotions, I think. I know some people, so I went to a for-profit university, so I have friends that have so much debt individually in their name that they're feeling left out. But then I also have some people that are a little bit more in my boat individually that are really going to see that difference. So I think it's a little bit of both. I think there are a lot of friends I have too that just didn't necessarily have student loan debt or had a very, very small amount when they got out of school, like under $10,000, that weren't really having their ear to the ground with this issue. And I think a lot of people are shocked that this happened. And I think I think we really needed this as Americans. Like there's been so much hard news in the last year, a lot of tragic stuff happening, with Roe v. Wade and a lot of things outside of student debt that have really, dampened people's attitude towards our government. And I think that this movement is putting a little bit of hope back into people, like, whoa, if I do stand up and if I do fight and if I do get involved, we can do something. And so I think a lot of people are feeling a little energized by it, even if it doesn't directly affect them too.
Definitely. We know that people who are impacted by student debt are from both parties, right? Everyone is affected by student debt. It's not just Democrats, it's not just Republicans, it's everyone. And when we talk about student loan borrowers, we forget that not only are they affected, but their entire family is affected as well by the financial decisions and decisions that they have to make in general in relation to how they budget or how they're going to afford their monthly payments. So that's a really big deal. I know that I have about $30,000 in federal student loan debt. And so as a Pell recipient, I also will be receiving a good chunk of debt cancellation. I know that my dad, who's actually watching today, he also will have his Parent Plus, almost all of his Parent Plus loans cleared with this decision as well. And so I know that it impacts my family directly. But I think that also makes me even more passionate when I come to work each day and I listen to people's stories, because I'm living what other people are living through. And I think the power of Student Debt Crisis Center and the work that our team is doing, and I'm just amazed. And I'm so happy when I wake up in the morning and I go to work, and I know not everyone has that, but I'm really passionate about this. And I think we're able to create a space for people to talk openly. And I know that Dr. Brian, hears from people directly and they share their stories and experiences each and every day. And for us to create a space that people feel safe and comfortable and create community for people to share, I think is so much more important. So, Dr. Brian, if you want to talk about the importance of creating spaces of community and just for people to get rid of the guilt and shame attached to student debt and to be able to just share their story, what is your advice in that sense?
It's so hard because, like, as you see with all the Republican messaging right now, they make it into a moral issue. They make it seem as if we are financially irresponsible. And the truth is, it's a rigged system. and we're just going in to try to live our American dream. And there is one mortal enemy to the American dream, and it's debt. So when we're looking at what are we supposed to do with community, we have to share our stories and our experiences with each other. We have to divorce ourselves from that number, because ultimately what we're hearing from society is that we are stigmatized by this number. We are not our student debt number. We are a person that is working towards bettering our world and to be just dreamers. And it's unfortunate that we have to make these cognitive positive reframes in order for us to feel okay with going to school. And it's a really sad day when you go online and you are being disparaged by individuals like Cancun Cruz or Tom Cotton or even Adam Kinzinger, speaking out against student loan debt, because they do not listen to people and they don't treat people as people. Just like Senator Schumer and Senator Warren were saying, this is all about helping individuals. And this is more or less why I got into the field that I got into. I really hope what we do now is we take a minute to like celebrate growth and to celebrate community, that we were able to come together and achieve this. And what I'm really hoping for is that we don't have individuals that have fallen through the cracks, with the current policy. So we need to rally behind them. And we need to make sure that they are not feeling excluded right now. And that we find ways to, use this precedence, this historic precedence, to recruit more and more people to find common community with student lending.
Yeah. And Lenice, in terms of, communications and conversations, I know you have 2 children. I know you have an older child and a younger one. So what conversations, if any, did you have with your older child before going to college? And now what conversation do you envision having with your younger child who, if they choose to go to college, what conversations would you have with them?
Well, the conversation I had with my older daughter is, who's paying for this? Like, how are we paying for this? Like, what's happening? Like, what are we going to do? I think I spoke with you earlier. When you're a certain age, you think you have it all. You understand, you know what's going on. You're signing and you get to go to college. That's just how it works. Then the Grim Reaper, so to speak, comes, and that first bill comes out and you're like, I said to her, make sure you're very clear on what you're signing and you understand what that means. Look at me, I'm still paying this debt that I'll probably pay, if this didn't happen, forever, and so I had that conversation with her, and she, of course, at 23, she has it all under control and she understands. And I said, okay, we're going to have another around, the mountain, just to make sure. And especially now with this, she's actually in teaching. So this helps, a lot. So I'm like, okay, we dodged a bullet on that one. So now I have my 11-year-old who at this point does not want to go to college. So, once we get into that, I will have that conversation with her too. But I want my story and my pitfalls for them. I always tell them, I want you to be greater and do better than me, because I didn't have the understanding of what it was. I didn't know that I'd be paying for this long. So conversations is always a big thing. I'm a big communicative type of person. So we will continue to have the conversations.
Definitely. And Carly, I know you do a lot of storytelling, video recording, which you did a fantastic video for us, by the way. Thank you so much for using your skills for this movement and for the greater good. What is your message to President Biden moving forward? I know we're celebrating, but what is your message to him? I know that you're going to benefit a lot, but maybe your sister might not benefit as much as you will. What message would you tell President Biden today?
I would say, first of all, thank you for what you've done so far. And we need so much more. This is not a thing that can be solved with a Band-Aid. I would say it's time to really get visionary about this. We need to think about, how are we going to attack the student debt crisis from every angle possible, because it's the only way that it's going to change. We don't want to spend another 10 years and, keep adding debt to what's already there. What is the visionary plan? We need to think like we've never thought before. And there are so many people that I think are ready to help him do that. It's not like we don't have the answers. It's not like we haven't thought about this. We haven't done the math. We haven't brainstormed and put our hearts into it. There are people like, Student Debt Crisis Center and so many other advocates that have the answers. And it's time to start building out a plan so that this never, ever happens again. I think what I would say to him is listen to us, listen to borrowers, really listen to the systemic, injustices that the structure of taking out student loans, really makes people face. Sorry, my cat just jumped up. Yeah, I think just let's get visionary about it. We need to think big, and we need to not be afraid of what the other side might say. We need to really dream and think about how we can leverage the power of the government, which I feel like sometimes with student loan debt, people act like the government doesn't have so much power to leverage to change this, even as far as bringing down the cost of tuition. The government could do that like that. So let's not pretend like our government is not as powerful as it is, and let's go.
Yeah. And, I lost my train of thought when I was asking you this question, but it just came back to me. But what is, for us at Student Debt Crisis Center, we had a petition that got over 150,000 signatures, which called on President Biden to meet with student loan borrowers. So what is the importance of having diverse voices in the ear of President Biden? How important is it to get those stories to him? We know that student debt is a racial justice issue. It's a gender equity issue. It's a mental health issue. It's a multi-generational issue. So how important is it for us to get multiple perspectives when it comes to student debt and who it impacts?
Yeah, I think that's crucial. And I think that's what will change the stigma about who holds student loans and change the narrative. And we have the power to do that. I think, when you talk to someone like Lenice, who has children and is in this place thinking about what am I going to do for my kids as they try and better themselves. I think there's been this idea that people that hold student loans are like, just like in their 20s that don't have families yet, and they'll just figure it out later. And that's so far from the truth. And I think that when that is brought to the forefront, then it's like, oh, damn, we got to do something about this. People like my mom, she's 62 years old and has a physical disability and cannot work. She doesn't quite qualify for, some of the disability discharge. It's like a really weird gray area, but, someone like her, what is she supposed to do? She doesn't make a lot of money and, has this huge bill that is going to be taking her until, into her elderly years. And so I think those stories need to be number one, because that's what's going to change the minds of people to realize that it's not, even if it just was a bunch of young people, I think that would be like fine too. Like it's still a huge problem. But I think showing that there is this particular issue with people about to get their Social Security checks and retire, and they're already struggling to keep up with bills.
Yeah. Brian, I don't know if you speak to any older borrowers or borrowers with older loans, about their thoughts on student debt and how they're affected. But what is your advice to people who are feeling overburdened, who are feeling discouraged by this announcement, who feel like it doesn't apply to them? What words of encouragement do you have for them?
I'm with them because I hold all Grad Plus loans, and 50% of all student debt is owed by grad students. And I can't wait until Republicans figure out that like blue collar workers go to grad school too. And And it's not just young people getting MBAs and working, in like New York City or anything like that. And it's weird because with that video, like I didn't see a single elitist on it. And like so that just drives me insane. But what I would say to the people that are discouraged is, I hear you. I'm literally with you. We're going to get our time too. If anyone has seen what has been going on with SDCC, with Senator Schumer, Senator Warren, Ayanna Pressley, Representative Ayanna Pressley, Senator Raphael Warnock, you will notice that these are unrelenting people, just like everyone in this organization. And the fight is not over. Our time will come. There is precedent now laid down. If there were little things that we would want included for graduate plus loans, we're going to get them because we've seen it happen for undergrad. So take a deep breath, give it time, come together. We'll talk about our frustrations, and that's okay. It's okay to feel frustrated in this moment. Our time is up. It's coming around really soon.
Yeah. Thank you for those words of encouragement. I know that whenever you speak, I always feel better. So it's really, it means a lot to a lot of people. So thank you. And Lenice, as someone who is almost there with fully having their debt canceled, what does this mean for you? We want to, also uplift how this greatly opens the doors for a lot of people, how this allows people to start envisioning a future that they never could have imagined after receiving that student loan bill, each month. So what does this mean for you and your family?
Wow. So as I spoke with you earlier, extracurricular activities now, we could do a little bit more. House, condo, I have a little bit more of a breathing room. So it's just allowing me to breathe. I was always at the end of my, wondering like, when is it going to start again? When is it going to happen again? And now it's just a period at the end of that. So now I can take all of that energy, sleepless nights, and now put it towards, okay, now I want to, a house. Now, like my daughter who's 23 in the city, it's like, if you need money, I have a little extra spending money. I can do this for you. I can help you. It's still surreal for me. I'm still like, Is it really canceled, or is there like a part 2 to this? Like what am I gonna have to pay back something? It's just very surreal, but it makes me as a single mom know that my children will be taken care of, that I am able to now take care of them fully.
Yeah, I know that for us, it also feels surreal. I know Natalia and Cody have been working at this for 10 years. So I can imagine what it feels like for them. For me, who has joined on more recently, it already is so incredible. But for them, it must feel like a weight has been lifted off their shoulders to know that their efforts really did make a difference. It really helped tip the scales and bring this to life, which is really important. And I just want to let everyone know that up next, we're going to be having our borrower panel, our expert panel. They'll be, answering some questions and talking about what it looks like, what the next steps look like. So I would like to ask the three of you, if you have any questions for our experts, like what would you ask them? What question do you have that you would like to be answered in the upcoming panel? I'll toss it to Carly.
Sweet, thank you. I don't know if I don't know the exact question to ask, but I want, some sort of maybe layout about Parent Plus loans and like how this affects Parent Plus loans. I know that it falls under I'm pretty sure the category of what is being canceled. But I guess I would love to hear more about a path forward for that, or if there's any other, movement there, or what we can do to kind of keep pushing that, because I think that that's an issue that is getting louder and louder and coming to the forefront. And what can we do as advocates, activists, and people in this movement to, keep making that a central topic?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I know that college prices have been increasing each and every year. And so students not only have to take out loans, but their parents do too, to try and support them. So that's a really great question. Brian, I'll toss it to you.
I guess the biggest question that I have is regarding the rationale for excluding graduate plus loans in this plan. Um, because like 50% of the debt is owned by graduate students, I wonder like how are we going to figure out how to serve them and how to assist them? Is it just an optics thing, or was it some other reasons behind it?
Great. And Lanice, I'll toss it to you.
Yeah, okay. The question I had for people who received a Pell Grant but only received partial amount, are they still able to receive the whole amount, or how will that work out?
Okay. I know we have a lot of questions from the people watching today as well. So I know we're going to try and answer as many as we can. But these questions are really great. I think what we're going to do as we almost reach time is I'll have each of you give your final remarks. If there's anything you wanted to mention that you haven't mentioned, or if you have a message for President Biden, feel free to share. Lanice, I'll kick it back to you.
I just want to thank SDCC. You guys were relentless. You guys were persistent. I appreciate all of your hard work. I appreciate the emails, the phone calls. I greatly appreciate that. And for President Biden, I do appreciate the fact that he is listening, that he is taking care of. My biggest thing is let's take care of home before we go outwards. Let's take care. And I'm grateful and I'm thankful that he did listen.
Brian?
I would like to thank all of you for your tireless work on this. And if I had a message for President Biden and for all the legislators, that have rallied behind this, thank you for making my job easier. I've seen people's feeling less demoralized and energized now. People are feeling hopeful. And I really want them to know that, student debt cancellation is a mental health issue, and it's intrinsically tied into the mental health crisis that we're facing. So thank you. And thanks for making my job easier.
Carly?
Yeah, thank you. I just want to say thank you to Student Debt Crisis Center. Thank you, Natalia and Cody, for bringing me into this movement and letting me be a part of it. It has been the highlight of my year to be able to work on these videos with you all and, be part of your team. It's meant so much to me. It's so different when you're doing this work and it aligns with something that you care about, like deep down in your heart. It's been amazing to see this go from an issue that people literally scoffed at to what happened yesterday. And it just gives me so much energy and hope to what else we can do going forward. My message for Biden, and I think I spoke on it earlier, is let's keep going. This is step one. We're all ready to take it to the next level and keep listening to our stories. Keep prioritizing the individual story of people that carry this debt. Because once you hear those stories, you can't go back. And to anybody that is listening to this that is, still hurting because it's not totally solving their problems, what I would say is get more involved. Be radically transparent about your situation with student loan debt. Talk to journalists, tell them, how much debt you have. Learn to kind of shed that shame about that number and put it out there as a way to keep everyone going and bring everyone else out of the light that might be scared to share it too.
Yeah, and I want to give a big thank you to Carly, Brian, and Lanice. None of this is possible without the three of you, without our supporters who have shared their stories, who have rallied behind us, who have supported us, whether it's throughout the 10 years or recently. This, as someone who works at SDCC, there were days that we felt discouraged. There were days where we felt like nothing was going to happen. But I know that yesterday was just huge for us and huge for so many people. And I believe that our stories and our lived experiences are the most powerful tools that we have. I got involved in all of this by filling out a survey from Student Debt Crisis Center. And I shared my story, and then I was invited to share it again. And I was able to share it with the Secretary of Education, Miguel Cardona, Senator Schumer, Senator Warren, and the president of the NAACP. And from there, I kept sharing my story. And then I started working with Student Debt Crisis Center, and I haven't stopped since, and I don't plan on stopping. So this is something that, I have seen the impact of sharing my story, and I hope that you all continue sharing yours. So I'm going to toss it to Cody. Thank you so much for joining us for this borrower panel. Next up, we have our experts.
Thank you so much, Sabrina. And thank you to these borrowers. These borrower stories have been at the center of our work from day one. It's what has gotten us across the finish line. And one of these borrowers, Carly, actually prepared this video intended to really highlight all the progress we've made over the last decade. And for those that have been following us from day one, and I know many of you have been, you may recognize some of these moments. It feels like forever ago that we were fighting for consumer protections in California, or urging President Obama 2 administrations ago to take action. It has been a long road, but there's a big win at the end, and not every movement can say that. So it is incredibly exciting to see everything we've accomplished. So I'm going to play this video, and then we will hear from our team of fellows here at the Student Debt Crisis Center.
When I got my organization started in 2012, student loan debt was at $1 trillion.
Student loan debt is growing 6 times faster than the nation's economy.
I majored in debt.
I majored in debt.
I definitely majored in debt.
Just the undergrad portion of federal student loans that were made between 2007 and 2012 are now on target to produce $66 billion in profit for the federal government.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Everybody have a seat. Welcome to the White House.
Navient is one of the most complained about companies out there.
Navient's practices aren't just wrong, they are against the law.
We will make a full and complete education a human right in America.
Because it is ridiculous that we're profiting, as Senator Warren said, off of student loans, and we're going to make sure that we cut that rate in half.
We need to make sure we're giving tools to California borrowers so that they can defend themselves against what we have found to be very predatory practices.
We add more than $2,850 per second. Another 28. Another 28.
I am really proud to be able to accept this petition, because to me, this is proof that people outside of Washington get it. With 1.2 million signatures.
But there's 45 million student loan borrowers out there, so we need everyone to have their voice heard.
I can tell you, when I first started, we didn't hear any lawmakers talking about this. And finally, we're seeing action.
We urge President Biden to act with urgency.
We're seeing action on the state level, the local level, and the federal level.
College should be a ladder up, but student debt makes it an anchor down. They stand in the way of buying a home, of starting a family, of buying a car, and they hurt our economy dramatically.
Let's cancel student debt today.
To cancel student debt.
It's time to cancel student debt.
That's why I'm calling on President Biden to remove this crushing burden.
I'm fighting every day to make student debt cancellation a reality.
We feel that this should not be means tested. Mr. President, we need you to cancel student debt, to go bold, to be automatic, and have no applications or cumbersome process. So I'll ask you one last thing. To just imagine a world without student loan debt. How much more do we need to add before you take action?
Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for being here to celebrate us with celebrate with us this year. My name is Adrija Bhattacharjee, and I'm a third year at the University of Rochester and an Economic Justice Fellow at the Student Debt Crisis Center. As a student who has had to take out loans during college, not because I expected to or planned to, but because I was forced to due to an unpredictable economy, I got stressed out seeing the numbers rise by the year. But now I actually have hope in our government, yes, but more so in us as advocates. Also, as a woman of color and a first gen, we all know that minority communities are disproportionately affected by student loan debt. And as someone that wants to attend grad school in the future, students like me should not have to choose between pursuing an education and suffering the penalties of hefty price tags. So I'm thankful that we're getting closer to bridging that gap. That's why I'm so honored to be a part of the team at SDCC and continue in this fight to cancel student debt even more than we already have. Before I pass it on to Reed, I just want to encourage all of you to stay on for our expert panel in a few minutes to get answers to the many questions that you have. And thank you once again.
Thank you, Adrija. It's been great to work with you and to get to know you over the past few weeks. It's been great to get to know Orlando and Sabrina and everybody else at SDCC as an Economic Justice Fellow. My name is Reed Cleland. I am an upstate New Yorker. Born and bred near the city of Syracuse, recent graduate of Colgate University, where I majored in political science and theater, which go together very well, and was very happy to have gone to Colgate and due to life circumstances where I was able to receive enough financial aid to get through Colgate without having to be a borrower. And I'm in this work because I know how that situation feels to not have to worry about the crushing burden of student loan debt. And I knew so many people at Colgate who had to take out student loans to pay for their education. And I see that as part of my personal mission in order to give back to those people. And living in a rural community, as I have for most of my life, there are so many people who give up on the dream of pursuing a higher education because of the amount of student debt that they could accumulate, and how many doctors and nurses and teachers are we losing in those rural areas, and how many services are being lost in rural areas because we don't have the professionals who are trained and who receive an education to be able to enrich their communities and give back to their communities. So that's why I'm here to be an advocate for rural communities in this very important fight. And special thank you to Cody and Natalia and Sabrina at SDCC for such an amazing fellowship experience.
Thank you so much, Reed and Adrija. I just want to say that the Economic Justice Fellowship here at Student Debt Crisis Center, and we're now on our third cohort. And Orlando, that you saw from before, used to be a fellow and is now one of our great team members. It's just vital. We really want to keep sharing our knowledge and training young leaders to continue this fight, right? We say we're going to be in this until we cancel every dollar. And the way to do that is with people like you, Reed and Adrija. You're just phenomenal. Like, I remember reading your resumes going, man, what did I do in college? Because you are just kicking ass. Pardon my French, but you're really amazing. Thank you so much for your support during this time and for being a part of our team. So thank you. And with that, I'm going to pass it to Cody, who's going to bring on our wonderful partners.
Yes, as you can see, we've got advocates from many different avenues. These are our young fellows. Now we're going to hear from some of the advocates that we've worked alongside for years from many other organizations. So I'm going to introduce them one by one, and we'll start a discussion about what this announcement means and where we go from here. So obviously, we just heard from Natalia Abrams. She's the president of the Student Debt Crisis Center. She was raising awareness about this issue a decade ago, before it was a big eye issue and a national discussion. And now we're just honored to have you here with us, Natalia, to be able to talk about what a decade of advocacy looks like, what this win means, and where we go from here. We also have Abby Shafroth, who's a staff attorney at the National Consumer Law Center, where she focuses on student loan and for-profit college issues, and on the intersection of criminal and consumer law. Abby's been representing the interests of students and legal assistance organizations and has been echoing their voices every day throughout this fight to cancel student loan debt. And I've seen it firsthand. So Abby, thank you so much for joining us today. We also have Persis Yu, who is the Student Borrower Protection Center's Policy Director and Managing Counsel. Persis is a nationally recognized expert on student loan law and has over a decade of hands-on experience representing student loan borrowers. She has been at the forefront, really the forefront of this fight to cancel student debt for years. We are thrilled to have her join us as well. And lastly, another great friend and ally of ours, we have Kristen McGuire, who is the Executive Director of Young Invincibles, where she has spent the last 5 years empowering young adults and advocates to fight for higher education, healthcare, and economic policies. Kristen really has been a leader in this fight to cancel student debt, both at the national level, and we've also been proud to serve with her at the state level, where we've passed consumer protections such as the California Student Borrower Bill of Rights. So she's really kind of seen this movement at every level. So all of you, happy to have you on today. I think there's a ton of questions. Our goal for today is hopefully to answer a lot of the questions that borrowers themselves have been submitting when they applied for this event, registered for this event, and throughout this discussion. But before we jump into the questions, I should probably just do a round and let's get some kind of initial responses. We heard from the borrowers, let's hear from advocates. So why don't we start with Abby? What's your take on this big announcement?
So first off, thanks for having me here today. It's been a really exciting time, obviously. And my short take is first that this was going to bring transformational change to tens of millions of people across the country who've been burdened by student loan debt for too long and who've been hurt by this broken student loan system and debt financed higher education model that we have. So it's really important, especially for the roughly 20 million borrowers who stand to have their debt wiped clean entirely. It's just going to be such an important change for those borrowers and an important part of our sort of national recognition that the way we've been approaching higher education is deeply flawed and that it's time for real change. That hints at sort of my second take, which is that this is something to celebrate. This was a big win by and for borrowers, but we're not done. We've got more work to do. We have to make sure that everyone who still has student loan debt after this cancellation has a real reasonable way to manage that debt and work towards being debt-free and is not overly burdened by that debt. And we want to make sure that we don't get back into the same place in another 5 years. We want to make sure that people are able to access higher education, post-secondary education without being burdened by these amounts of student loan debt. Ideally, we want people to be able to access post-secondary education without any debt at all. So that's what I'm thinking about today.
And Abby, before I kick it over to Persis to get her take on this, you mentioned how this will transform lives, and it certainly will. And since you're one of these advocates who talks with borrowers every day, and frankly, the borrowers you talk to are often struggling the most, when we say it transforms their lives, like, can you give us an example? Like, what does this mean for an individual, for their family, for their ability to thrive? Any experiences or opinions you're hearing from the borrowers you're working with?
Yeah, so I mean, some of the, as you mentioned, we work with borrowers generally who are seeking legal aid assistance. So they have to meet income threshold requirements where they're living often close to or below the poverty line. Often we're working with borrowers who are taking care of young kids and who are really struggling to get by day to day and to keep up with necessary expenses and to keep their family fully fed, in a safe home, all of those things. And for many, student debt has really destabilized the ability to just meet these basic daily needs. The worst off borrowers are often the borrowers who've experienced student loan default. They've been unable to keep up and the system hasn't helped them access relief. They wind up in default and they can have their entire tax refund seized, including things like the Earned Income Tax Credit, which is one of the country's key anti-poverty systems that is supposed to help lift families with children out of poverty. Because of student debt, many of these families have had that taken away from them, which means that many who are counting on that money to provide first and last month's rent, to move into a safe home with their family, to fix a car so that they can get to work. These are all these terrible experiences that borrowers we've worked with have had, and suddenly they can sort of breathe a sigh of relief and know that this safety net is no longer going to be threatened, and that they have a real opportunity now to just attain some level of financial security.
I'm so glad you mentioned the sigh of relief. We had Brian, a psychologist, on the last panel, and the last time he spoke with borrowers, we did a collective sigh just to get rid of the stress. It was a very different kind of collective sigh. Now we get to actually have, a level of positivity, which is really, really special, and I think part of today's, celebration. Persis, I'm going to kick it to you now. What's your take on this big announcement, and what are your thoughts about what this means and where we go from here?
Yeah. So of course I second everything that Abby says, because, having also spent the last decade working with low-income borrowers and folks who've seen those seizures of the earned income tax credit, of their wages, of Social Security benefits, that it is absolutely devastating when that happens. And the fact that there are millions of borrowers who are never going to have to experience that again, I think is really amazing. It is worth uplifting those folks in this space. One of the things as I've been, reflecting over the last 24 hours is just thinking about what is possible, right? And thinking about what we thought back, where this all started, right? 10 years ago, I was there when you guys just started 10 years ago, and thinking about, we weren't quite past the $1 trillion mark, but it was still a big problem for folks, and folks were not listening to us when we said that this was a problem, and everyone thought that income during payment was going to be the thing that was going to save the day. This was going to keep, loans affordable and give folks a pathway out of debt. And we saw that didn't happen. But the proposals that folks were talking about, while we thought were big and bold of, let's give people cancellation after 20 years instead of 25 years, right? Like, that's the scale of what we were looking at as possible changes 10 years ago. And now we're at this moment where we just promised to eliminate the debt for 20 million people. And that is huge. And so I think we absolutely, as a movement, need to recognize what we have actually accomplished here. And we've set the bar higher, I think, of what is possible. So when we think about what comes next, we need to make sure that we're not just thinking about the small technocratic fixes that will, make a tweak. I mean, we absolutely need to do those too, right? We need to walk and chew gum at the same time. The details are important, and but we need to make sure to set the bar higher. I think the one piece is we do still need to lift up the voices. We should absolutely celebrate every single borrower who will not have debt, and those voices are so important, and we should not drown them out. But we absolutely need to lift up the borrowers who will still have debt at the end of the day. Reducing your balance sheet is not nothing, and for a lot of people that will also be really huge and beneficial, right? But there are some people, one of the things I used to say when I worked directly with borrowers is, for a lot of my clients, it didn't matter if they had $500, $5,000, or $50,000 of debt. They couldn't afford to pay it, right? And so lifting up those folks who will still have the debt, who will still not be able to afford the debt, that if we don't see big reforms to the debt collection system, will, when all of these executive actions kind of settle and go away, may still see their earned income tax credit seized again, may still see their wages garnished. So we need to keep pushing forward. We need to keep pushing forward for the remaining 23 million people who we did not get total cancellation for. And I think we can do it. I think we've shown that we can do it.
Absolutely. I think we're all feeling very optimistic that this is just the start to much more. I know your team, I'm sure, is working on a lot. We will be collectively as a movement regrouping and thinking about the road ahead, I'm sure. Kristen, I've been eager to come to you. I know you are an advocate. You are also a borrower, and I believe you also have, your own family is experiencing taking on new loans as we speak, perhaps, or at least getting a higher education. So what does this mean for you as an advocate and as an individual as well?
Well, first of all, I went to sleep last night and wasn't sure that yesterday was real. So that's that. Congratulations on your 10 years, guys. Thanks so much for a decade of advocacy. Thank you for having me. It feels like, I don't know, like a pinch myself moment. I think that what we've accomplished collectively is something that I didn't start doing this until like 2015 with the defrauded Corinthian students. And I remember back then thinking we were going to get nowhere with that. And we did. And then I remember my next thought was, this will probably never happen for just regular people without exceptional stories. And so I think this is just truly a moment. I told my team at Young Invincibles, make sure, even though the fight is not over, and even though we didn't get everything we wanted, make sure you take a moment to stop and celebrate a decade of hard work, of sharing your stories, of advocacy, of organizing, like all of these different tactics that all of us as organizations and as individuals have contributed to this work. It's amazing. It's amazing to have a president that listened to the stories, that read the news articles, that actually paid attention. Also, sorry, because people come work in the yard when you get on webinars, if you can hear the lawnmower. But I feel like as a student borrower myself, and recognizing that, that I realized there were problems with how I was asked to repay my loans very early on. I realized that I didn't have the information or the tools I needed to be successful. And I didn't even get to realize until 7 years after that it was actually a problem larger than me just not having the information. So as many of you have heard a million times, when I hear the data points and the statistics about Black women, I see myself. I see my daughter, who is a third year at UCLA. I see all of my friends. I actually don't know anyone that doesn't have, in my personal circle, that doesn't have a story just like mine. So it's deeply personal. I am very excited. I am getting text messages. My best friend is like, wait, what do you mean I get Pell Grant? And so it's 20,000, like people are happy, and I'm happy for them. I'm happy with them. And like, of course the movement will continue. Of course there is work to do, but it is very, very important in movement building work that we're doing, that everyone takes a moment to just celebrate these really good times. So yeah, I'm happy for everyone. And I'm happy to continue to make sure that, we don't stop till we actually accomplish the full goal.
Kristen, I love that positivity. I'm curious, just from your unique vantage point too, because I know Young Invincibles, really advocates and organizes young people. How are young people responding to this plan? They have a very, I think, unique experience with student debt. And it's a story that I think is worth being told.
Sure. So I think that it's a mixed bag. We have folks who are feeling heard, feeling really excited, but also, notwithstanding the fact that we didn't get widespread 50K cancellation. And this is where communication and outreach and education becomes very important, because we also have to get into the weeds to discuss the other details and these other possible rule changes that are going to be very beneficial for people. Reducing payments down to 5% discretionary income. That's huge. And we need to be able to message that and communicate that in a way where young adults can understand. Not only is it important for us now and changing payments now, it's important for future financial decisions as people continue to take out student loans. So I think people are happy, they feel heard, which is very important. I think we made requests of our administration, and we want to hold them accountable. So I think that this is really a step in that direction. We made a request, it was heard, and that's good.
Great. And last but not least, I'm going to pass it to Natalia, our president. Natalia, what is your take on this?
Well, first of all, thank you all for being here. I couldn't think of a better group to be talking to right now. Kristen, I know you joined us like 7 years ago, but Young Invincibles was one of our very first partners. I would venture to say Student Debt Crisis Center wouldn't be here if it wasn't for YI's initial support. The intelligence and policy information we get from you, Abby and Persis, thank you. We're a small team, we can only do so much. And if you approve of the policy, we know it's good. So I just am honored to be here. And there are folks missing, our friends at Strike Debt, at Generation Progress, folks that have just been in this fight for a long time. So this is just a small snippet of the amazing folks that have been working on this. And I think my response is, something I was always told is the only way out is through. And Persis is right. Like when I got started, we were fighting to just not double the interest rate. Don't double my rate. That was the big thing that we were trying to get. And then it was, repay and these complicated income-based repayment programs that we all thought would help borrowers. But time and time again, borrowers who informed us were telling us how much these programs were failing. And now, by just all the value of your stories, and hundreds of thousands of you have shared your stories with Student Debt Crisis, millions upon millions have signed petitions and sent letters. The action is just overwhelming. I often say that this was a civic duty for me to keep going. It was your energy that kept us going all the time. And we did it. We did the first level of this. We got for 20 million people, they're going to have $10,000 to $20,000 gone, absolutely gone, or 20 million people absolutely gone, but they got $10,000 to $20,000, which is just unreal if you think about it. How many billionaires out there are giving people $10,000 or $20,000 to 20 million people? It's not the billionaires doing it, it's the advocates that you see in this room right now that are working hard to make sure you're whole. So just so grateful to be here and already thinking and mulling on all the hard work we're going to do. And I know Kristen and Persis and Abby, we're going to be joining together to ensure every borrower gets the cancellation that they are entitled to. We did not leave you when we didn't double the interest rate. We did not leave you when we got repayment plans, and we're not going to leave you now until every penny is canceled and until we make college free.
Well, thank you all for the first round of just opinions. And now I want to get into some kind of technical questions. And it's funny, we asked our supporters to submit questions when they registered for this event. And 72 hours ago, it was a ton of questions about when is the president going to cancel student debt? Why hasn't it happened? And as of 9 a.m. yesterday, it changed to how do I actually receive this relief? So it was quite funny actually going through the questions this morning and trying to see what was fresh and new. But I have a lot of people, including Angela, who asked, I think, the most fundamental question. And I'm going to send this one to you, Persis, because even I send you questions all the time because you're kind of my go-to expert. Will this cancellation be automatic, or what are borrowers going to need to do to be able to take advantage of this relief?
Thanks, Cody. That's so important. And I think it's important for most people to know that for most people, it will not be automatic. And so we obviously don't have the details, we don't have the form, but what we understand is that the Department of Education is working on a very simple form, and they've promised that it will be simple, and we're going to hold them to that, right? That it'll be a very simple form that hopefully all borrowers will have to do is to attest that they do meet the income qualifications and submit the form. We know that there will be a web-based form. We're hoping there will also be a paper form so that folks who don't have internet access are able to get this relief as well. They are going to try to do it automatically. We've heard that they have the income information sufficient to give this cancellation automatically to 8 million borrowers. And that's because they have their FAFSA information from 2020, 2021, or the borrower has filled out an income drain payment form in the last 2 years. So they have some for 8 million. I hope that they're going to dig deep and try to figure out more ways to give it automatically for more folks. But most people are going to need to do something. And I think everyone, it's great that their folks are engaged, and I have a lot of confidence that these folks, the folks that are listening are going to be the first ones in line. But tell your friends, right? Once you know, tell your friends, because we need to make sure to get the folks who are not engaged filling out these forms and doing everything. So yeah, we got to get it to every single person. 43 million people need to be signing forms.
And Abby, I want to bring you into this question too, because I know you wrote about how an income threshold in an application process could create potential roadblocks, and we didn't get all of the plan we wanted, which would have been automatic relief for everyone. So, what potential roadblocks could borrowers face, and what should they kind of be aware of as they're navigating this process?
Sure. So I think the biggest potential roadblock is just people not realizing that there is relief that they are eligible for. So a communication barrier and access to that information. It may surprise you, but I've actually spoken with some people who didn't even realize that they had student loan debt until they sat down with a financial counselor who pulled their credit report and identified a student loan line. The way that particularly some of these for-profit college schools sort of fast talk people into enrolling and tell them, look, you're going to get a whole bunch of financial aid, don't worry about the cost, means that some people enroll and sign forms without a chance to read them, without even realizing that they're taking on student loan debt. So those folks aren't going to necessarily know. This is why it's really important to do this as much communication as possible, and sort of consciousness raising and talking to everyone in your networks and your communities about this, encouraging them to check, find out if you ever went to post-secondary school at all, check whether you might have a student loan out there. And also, of course, to figure out whether you might have had a Pell Grant that would make you eligible for even additional relief. So those things are really important. So yeah, just getting the word out to as many people as possible and encouraging them to check for themselves whether they might be eligible. Obviously, at the same time, we're going to be really involved in advocating with the Biden administration and folks in the Department of Education to do their part to get the word out. They have contact information for many, but not all borrowers. They should be communicating effectively with those borrowers, telling people what their rights and options are, and helping guide them through the process. But because we're on here with a lot of borrowers and a lot of advocates, I want to say, don't rely on that. Don't rely on that. Take matters into your own hands. This is something we're ultimately all going to have to do together. One thing that I have talked to folks at the Department of Education about is making sure that there is a paper application and application forms available in different languages. They've told me they will have a paper application. They will have an application at minimum in Spanish in addition to English. That's going to be really important for people who have trouble with internet access, with many people who struggle with the studentaid.gov website and getting their FSA ID correctly in there. And it's also going to mean that this is going to be, the paper application should allow us to do more things like clinics, like taking advantage of other sort of big gatherings and getting that application into people's hands and helping them in real time to answer questions and fill it out. So I think that's really important and something that we should all be thinking about. And thinking about in general, how to are there ways that we can be creative in thinking about thinking about combining getting people to sign up for student debt relief with signing up for other things. Like maybe there are voter registration drives that can work together with student debt cancellation drives. And maybe this is a way of also getting people to feel a part of this. I'm trying to see the silver lining of this. I still want as much automatic cancellation as possible. But if the department and the administration are going to require people to apply, then let's use this as an empowerment and organizing and storytelling opportunity to help make more people understand that it was borrowers who fought for this and won this, borrowers who can do more, borrowers who can help ensure that the next generation doesn't have the same challenges and the same pain that they endured. So anyhow, that was I realize I digressed a bit from your original question there, but I'm hopeful that we can turn some of these really negative, disappointing aspects of the announcement around into something that can help us build a better future.
Well, I actually appreciate that you've gone down this road because I think this is a great opportunity to bring Kristen in as well. Because Kristen, we at SDCC, you all at YI, we are working on education and outreach programs. You all at YI have been doing this work for healthcare, for signing up for vaccinations. So you know kind of firsthand the value of using kind of awareness raising, trusted messengers to get the word out about complex programs that could benefit people. So, what do you imagine we will be doing over the next few months to make sure borrowers know about this? And why is that important that they hear from trusted voices?
Well, it's very important that borrowers and young people hear from trusted voices because there has been such a mistrust in government that has, grown over the past few years of not knowing what information to believe, what information not to believe. And we see it across issue areas. We saw it with healthcare. We saw it with vaccinations. Like, we continue to see this. So trusted messengers are important to be able to reach groups that normally we wouldn't have access to. It's important because we want folks to actually take the action. If there's a form to fill out, we need to be able to tell them, I am someone who filled out the form. I trust the form. Nothing negative happened. And that's why groups like ours are so very important. And what I envision will happen is similar to the work that we've been doing now, but with a razor sharp focus on, getting folks, one, to fill out the PSLF waiver, and also getting people to fill out the new debt cancellation form. So that means we're going to have to walk people through processes. It means we're going to have to gather folks like we are today virtually. It also means we're going to have to deploy people to places where borrowers may gather. It may mean working with employers. It may mean going to campuses and talking to people. It's going to be a massive effort. But I think that the work that we've done over these past few years, we already have the recipe to success. And I think that we are absolutely the people who will continue to get this work done and to get the message out.
Great. I want to get Natalia, your word on this, and then I've got a question from James for you as well.
Okay, yeah, just real quick. I see that we have over 1,000 people on here. As Persis is saying, if you're on here, that means you're one of the dedicated folks that have been paying attention, really care about this issue. Tell your friends. If everyone here can tell 5, 10, 20 people, that's a start, right? It's not the 43 million, but this is really going to be through word of mouth, along with all the work of advocates. So we cannot stress enough, tell people and tell them that it's real, because Kristen's right. There is this distrust there, especially for student loan borrowers who time and time again, who feel they just have gotten the runaround. This is real. Like what Senator Warren said about her staff member, having to tell the waiter at the restaurant, this is real, it's happening. And folks here are going to ensure that they do it right.
Great. And I got this question from James, and I think, this event was initially going to be just focused on our 10-year anniversary. So this question, I think, is pertinent for us, Natalia, and I'd love to get your opinion. But James is really thrilled about the announcement. At the same time, he asked, why did it take so long to get here in the first place? It's been a decade of advocacy. Why now? And, is there still optimism for more change even after this moment?
So I have more optimism than I've ever had in this space. Someone said already, the impossible, right? When the impossible becomes possible, it just opens up so much more that can be done. Movements take a while. I remember one of my early mentors in this space when we were about to launch Higher Ed Not Debt saying, it's going to take 10 years and some people might not be able to stick around. Well, guess what? It took 9. So we did it a year early and we're going to keep doing it. And it will just speed up from here. I really think this is the movement 2.0. It got started in earnest yesterday with the entire country talking about it in every single front pages of newspapers, nothing I could have imagined for this issue and for student loan borrowers. So we are going to use that energy to build more. I'm sorry it took so long. I know every day for the borrowers was suffering and hard for you, but I have more hope than I ever had before in this space.
Well, I think one of the things too that really raised the consciousness recently is how popular student debt cancellation is. And so I think, Persis, I'd love to get your opinion. Your team has been polling Americans from across the country and showing in real time that student debt cancellation is widely popular. So What did you guys find, and what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a true statement that I mean, obviously among student loan borrowers, canceling student loan debt is widely popular, but we found that it's widely popular amongst almost every demographic that we polled. It's popular amongst, people who didn't take out student loans. It's popular amongst people who had student loans and paid it off. It is popular among people who did not go to college. And one thing that actually was kind of interesting when we look at the breakdowns is like, there are a lot of people who want to cancel all the debt, right? That is actually like, in some populations more popular than canceling some debt for folks. But we saw, it's popular amongst independents. It's popular amongst young Republicans. So this is not an issue that really only speaks to, young people with lots of student debt and lots of degrees. It speaks to a lot of people. And, I think that the story that we tell through the polling, right? Because we tell the polling both because we think politicians who rely on their voters need to know this information, but I think it also tells a broader story about how student loan debt impacts everybody, right? When you think about just like you start small, we have 43 million student loan borrowers, right? But they have families, right? They have children that they are feeding. They have spouses that they're supporting, right? Many, especially in communities of color, are supporting more extended families, right? They're supporting their neighbors, financially and emotionally. They're spending their money in their communities, right? So this is not an issue that just touches people who happen to have student loan debt. This is something that touches everybody broadly, right? And I think that's really the story that we can tell from this polling, not just that it's popular, but that there's a reason that it's popular when you look at all of these different categories, because it's not just the borrower themselves that's impacted.
Yeah, Kristen, I'd love to get your opinion on that piece as well. We know Black women have more student loan debt per borrower than any other demographic. And Persis, you addressed the kind of racial equity piece here. Kristen, what are your thoughts about how student debt cancellation can help address racial equity issues and is particularly valuable for Black women?
Yeah, as Persis was speaking, I'm like, yes. So there's a couple of things. I often think about like the generational impact of student debt. And when you have communities, not only Black communities, but the Latinx and the Indigenous communities who have been blocked out of the creation of generational wealth because of our American policies and our foundation, student debt is just another hurdle that we have to overcome. The picture that I like to plant is we are often told, go to college to lift yourself out of poverty and build something better. And so we do that only to have more policies in place for us to jump over. So what this looks like in real life application is that I had to buy a home later in life because I couldn't afford to, because of all of the debt I have, because I went to college to try to get the job where I could afford to buy a home, right? So when you're starting at zero and you constantly have these hurdles placed in front of you, it's really hard to get ahead. And so that also means then I'm not in a position to maybe have all of the tuition saved or nest egg ready for when my own children get ready to go to college, which then creates the problem for their children. So when we have large groups of people who, because of structural racism, have not been able to get ahead in this country, student loan debt is that we actually have to pay more to go to college because we started with no money. We didn't start with a little bit to get us started. And so it impacts us for generations. That's why we are still first generation college students after being in this country the entire time. And not being allowed to participate in higher education. So I can go on and on and on about what the issues are. But yes, Persis is right. This impacts communities of color in ways that it does not necessarily impact everyone else. And quite frankly, it's by design. So what we've done yesterday is started to chip away at the very framework of that design. So with the Pell addition of the additional $10,000 for Pell recipients, it actually chips away at the foundation of lower income people having to pay more to access the same education. So these chipping away of these racist policies I think that's what I'm the most excited about. I'm very, very excited about that because it's starting to create the possibility of righting past wrongs and giving folks a fair shot.
Absolutely. And yesterday's announcement was really just the beginning of that chipping away. We know our friends who do research at the Roosevelt Institute and the strong advocates at the NAACP have said that we need to cancel more debt. If we really want to address the racial equity problems associated with higher education, we have to keep going. And so all of us here will continue to do that work. And we hope you all will continue to fight with us. Abby, I'm seeing a question here from Doug, and now looking at, I should have led with this because I think it's important for everyone. But Doug wanted to actually know about the change to income-driven repayment plans in this announcement. And so I should say, there's a lot more here than just student debt cancellation. So maybe we can just summarize everything that was announced yesterday, from cancellation to payment pause extension to IDR, so we can just kind of level set. So maybe you can fill us in on that.
Sure. So full scope of the announcement included up to $10,000 in federal student debt cancellation for all borrowers who earn under $125,000 for individuals and under $250,000 for people who are head of household or married and filed jointly, I believe. Additionally, borrowers who ever received a Pell Grant are eligible for up to $20,000 in student debt cancellation. So, and they announced that an application will be available to borrowers in the coming weeks. Hopefully they'll hold to that. The Biden administration also announced that the payment pause is going to be extended. So borrowers were facing repayment again starting at the beginning of September. The payment pause is going to be extended through the end of the year. So no payments for a while. And the payment pause extension includes the extension of not charging interest to borrowers with eligible loans. So those are largely loans held by the Department of Education. In addition to the cancellation, the payment pause extension, President Biden also announced that the administration will be coming out soon with a new income-driven repayment plan proposal. So there are a number of existing income-driven repayment plans. Most of those plans set borrowers' payment at 10% of what they call 10 to 15% of what they call discretionary income, defined as income over 150% of the federal poverty threshold. The new plan is intended to cut borrowers' payments in half for undergraduate loans. So on undergraduate loans, instead of paying 10% of discretionary income, borrowers would pay 5% of discretionary income. Additionally, what's defined as discretionary income would be level set a bit to better recognize what income people really need to meet their basic needs. They're proposing raising it from 150% of your income is protected to 225% of your income is protected, which would mean lower payments for everyone, and for more people would have access to $0 payments. And additionally, there are two other major aspects of this income-driven repayment plan announcement. One is that borrowers whose payments, income-based payments aren't enough to fully cover the interest that's accruing each month, that the government is going to basically subsidize or cancel that interest, so that this is meant to address the problem where a lot of borrowers who have high debt-to-income ratio or lower income, their payment doesn't cover their interest each month. So even though they're making payments each month, their balance is going up while in income-driven repayment, which is incredibly stressful, and is part of the reason that we have so much student loan debt out there. So this is intended to address that and make sure that for borrowers in income-driven repayment, their balance doesn't go up at least. Finally, for borrowers who take out a smaller dollar amount in loans to go to school, so borrowers who take out less than $12,000, they're saying that the timeline for income-driven repayment will be 10 years. Your loans are canceled after 10 years in the program, as opposed to 20 years under the current plans. So that's the proposal. You know, we don't have a lot of details yet, and there'll be a lot of sort of devil in the details. And I think it will realistically reduce loan payments for lots of borrowers. we're probably, I can assure you that we're going to be advocating for the department to do more and to overhaul the income-driven repayment system more to ensure that borrowers can really make steady progress towards being debt-free rather than having to wait 20 years to get their debts canceled. But yeah, between that and the reduction in balances, borrowers who, when they do re-enter repayment, should have access to lower payments than they would have otherwise.
Great.
Did I leave anything out?
I don't think so. Persis, is there anything that, as our other resident experts, is there anything that's missing there?
Abby covered it completely. I know in the last panel, there was one of the questions was about why graduate students were excluded. And I think that this is, I think it's very important to talk about this issue because I think, for those who really want to nerd out on the process about how student loan regulations are made, I participated in the rulemaking committee back in the fall, which got the first draft of these rules put together. And this was a really contentious point between negotiators and the Department of Education about whether or not to include graduate students in this program. I mean, and the answer to why, they never really gave an answer, but if you want to know like why people get excluded for things, the answer is almost always money, is because it's expensive. But I think it's so important to really like dig into what this really means for borrowers, especially, what it means is that two borrowers with the same incomes will not pay the same amount based upon whether or not they have a degree, right? So it kind of makes no sense. Why would a borrower with $50,000 of annual income somehow magically have more resources because they also happen to have a master's degree, right? And so it both doesn't make sense kind of logically, but also it has huge racial justice implications. We know, as Kristen has said, that Black women require a master's degree or higher in order to have the same income as white men with bachelor's degrees, right? And we know that this is going to have huge racial disparities in how much people are going to pay. Two people with the same incomes are going to pay different amounts, and we know that is disproportionately going to negatively affect Black women in particular. And so this is a thing. These rules are not final, is the other piece that I think is actually very important, right? We're going to see the details of this plan, the really deep details, in the next week or so, and we will have an opportunity to comment. That is so important for folks to know, and for this group of people in particular who are engaged and really pissed off about this provision to know, is that there is going to be a comment period on these rules. They can't finalize them without a comment period, and people should really push back on this particular, on many of the pieces there when we get the details, but like this in particular, I think is going to be hugely important for people to push back on, and they're not final. So we still have time to fix it.
Well, and as we know right now, because I see Marianne and a lot of others have asked this, Parent Plus loans.
Yes, also excluded from that plan.
That's really important to know. So we've got a lot of work to do to really expand this.
Absolutely.
Just to make sure there's no confusion, I do want to make clear, Parent Plus loans are included in the cancellation.
And graduate students.
And graduate students are included in the cancellation. This is just the income-driven repayment plan that is cutting out Parent Plus and graduate student loans.
Very important detail. Natalia, I see you want to jump in here.
Yeah, no, absolutely that. And we're getting a lot of emails. And we know that typically when we host these workshops, we have a very robust Q&A and chat. We just had too many people show up on this Zoom to do that. I want to let you know that at Student Debt Crisis Center, and I'm assuming Student Borrower Protection Center and YI, we will all be hosting workshops and events in the future. And we will be doing one very soon, so you can ask your questions. And the other thing is we're also awaiting just more information. At this moment, it's not quite as easy as just go to studentaid.gov and get your cancellation. They're still getting that stuff together. You can go to studentaid.gov and see if you have a Pell Grant. I believe they are now, and Persis, Abby, correct me if I'm wrong, accepting email addresses to then notify you when you can do your income check. So it's going to take a little bit. This is like such a huge announcement that it will take some time, but as we get more information, we promise you that we will be sharing it with you. We will also be having more of these workshops, or we will be having more workshops so you can ask your questions and voice your opinions on what's going on.
Can I just add one more thing on things that people can do now? Because what we haven't yet mentioned, and I wrote a note in really big letters to make sure that I didn't forget, is FFEL borrowers. Borrowers with the federal family education loans, and folks who don't have ed help loans. They will need to consolidate in order. We understand that they're going to need to consolidate. We should continue to push to get it automatically, but what it looks like right now is that they will need to consolidate to get this information. They also need to consolidate to take advantage of some of the other actions that the president has taken, like the IDR account adjustment and the PSLF waiver. But borrowers can consolidate their loans now. That's a thing that people can start doing if they do not have the Department of Education help loans. So I just wanted to make sure that we really do get that out there, because that is a thing that there are millions of borrowers with those loans out there, and they will need to take action.
Great. I see we've got 5 more minutes. I want to ask one more question about what this means, and then we can, I think, just do a round of closing thoughts here. But this one is really important. Daryl was asking, how does today's announcement impact all of the other programs borrowers are hearing about, whether it's public service loan forgiveness or anything else that we're still working on reforming and fixing as we speak? And so I'll open the floor, because I know all of us, I think, are working on this in one way or another. So how does this impact other student loan programs?
I'm happy to jump in, but if anyone else wants to,
I was going to too, but I wanted to be fair. So yes, Persis, please. We want to get your expertise there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to know that the Department of Education is in the process of rewriting the rules for many of the programs, right? And so there are regulations that are they just closed the comment period for public service loan forgiveness and many other discharge programs. We're going to see it come up for income to repayment. So there are steps being taken to reform the system at large, and there are places that people can plug in to give their opinions about this. And so I encourage folks to do that, but there is also the income to repayment account adjustment and the PSLF waiver, which folks should still pay attention to, because they will give complete relief to borrowers, or get people better in line to get complete relief. So I think that they go hand in hand, right? Like, we know that income to repayment has been broken, public service loan forgiveness has been broken, and borrowers have not been able to take advantage of it. This is a way that, especially for folks who have more than the $10,000 or $20,000 of outstanding loan balances, could potentially get the remaining balances canceled. So fortunately and unfortunately, people do need to pay attention to all of the things happening, because there is more relief out there for other folks.
And speaking of the public service loan forgiveness waiver, deadline October 31st, Ed and FSA are having a webinar this evening to walk people through it. And it's at 4 p.m. Pacific time, 7 p.m. Eastern time. But like Persis said, utilize all the things. I just told my friends, and I put on social media, fill out all the forms and don't decide for yourself what you're eligible for. Let's let them figure that out. What you should be doing is just filling out the forms. Fill out your PLSF form, fill out your cancellation form, fill out the forms.
Kristen's being very generous, highlighting FSA. Her team is currently working, double time in California to get public service employees all informed. So that work is, happening as we speak. So these other programs are still very much alive and very, very important. Natalia, did you want to add in here?
Oh, no, I just wanted to, because I see the time, I just wanted to, again, thank everyone, but just for us to remember what just happened yesterday, because it still feels so surreal that 20 million people are going to see their debt completely wiped out. 43 million people are going to see something, some type of action. These big reforms to the system, these are our opportunity to continue to stay loud, to ensure that they go bigger and bolder as they're reforming. And, I think everyone here is keenly aware of those folks that feel left out, that feel that not enough was done. I would hope that at least today you have a little more hope, a little more like foresight that this can happen eventually for all of us. So I just wanted to bring us back to like why we are here, of celebrating this monumental, historic first step. And, just thanking you, Cody, for really leading a phenomenal ship here at Student Debt Crisis Center.
Well, thank you. As we said earlier, it has really been about our borrowers and the folks that we're all fighting for. I think that's a wonderful way to kick off in this last minute, just a quick round of closing thoughts. Let's do it in the order we started with. So we'll go Abby, Persis, Kristen, and then Natalia, you can send us off today. So Abby, what are your closing thoughts and maybe call to action leaving this event today?
I want to echo Kristen. Fill out all the forms. Take every opportunity to get to get relief from the student debt that you've been shouldering, and tell your friends, tell your networks, spread the word, help them. It's often too complicated, but like together we can do this, and stay in this fight. Today, this announcement shows that borrowers working together can do big things. We can accomplish big things. We can change the system. And there's a lot more to fix still, and we can keep doing it together.
Persis, you're up.
All right. Well, I want to thank you, Cody and Natalia, for hosting this in the Student Debt Crisis Center, for organizing all these borrowers. I think, hearing borrower voices, and thank you to all the borrowers, right? It's so brave to tell your story. And, we heard on the last panel about the stigma that exists about student debt. And it is so important for borrowers to tell their stories, to show what a broad issue this is and how many people, and what it really is, a diverse issue impacting young people, old people, folks without degrees and folks with degrees. And so thank you to everyone who shared their stories that helped push this forward. We did do a lot of work, but it was, because of all of the borrowers and with the support of the borrowers, and that's what made this happen. And so I'm very excited. I'm very excited for yesterday, and very hopeful that we will do big things tomorrow and beyond.
Guess it's my turn. Again, I want to congratulate Student Debt Crisis Center for 10 years of hard work. That is something that, we cannot say enough. Thank you so much. I think my lasting thoughts, of course, fill out the forms, Secondly, celebrate. It is important in movement work that we take time to celebrate, rest, and don't stop. We have a great win here. And I really want people to understand that us regular people got the president to do something that we've been asking him to do. We didn't have a lot of money behind us. We didn't have commercials. We just had us and you guys. And this is monumental. And I want everyone here to just feel that and be a part of that victory and understand organizing works, activism works, storytelling works. This is a huge collective victory that we've actually accomplished this in an amount of time that we were able to see it from start to finish. We actually didn't have to tag in a whole new group of people to do the work. We got the work done. So this is huge. Congratulations to everyone on the call, all of the viewers, and every student borrower across the country. Whether this victory is for you personally or not, this is a huge collective victory. So thanks for having me, guys.
And I just keep thinking about President Biden's speech yesterday and how he was leaving, and the press was shouting questions, and he came back just to echo the talking points that all of us have been saying for a long time, that people, mostly on the Republican side, did not complain when we forgave a bunch of PPP loans, and did not complain when we had a $2 trillion tax cut. And we don't want to hear it anymore. And what's great is now that we can all say, as President Biden said, we have the president on our side, y'all. That's a huge, huge deal. And that means that we have his ear. And trust me, our voices will drown that out. I want to echo what everyone said. Thank you to the borrowers. That was so brave, so amazing to share your story. It's never easy, especially with financial information. And to our just wonderful partners, this is done with unity and collaboration. And we're going to continue to do that and build our coalition. When we first started, there was maybe 5 groups, if we were lucky, working on this really hard. Now we have over 525 groups that support this issue. That is how things grow. I just can't wait for the next 5 years. We're going to end this crisis, you all. It's going to happen.
All right. Well, I am optimistic, hopeful, tired. It's been a crazy hours. We've done a lot. I want to just, applaud from beginning to end these last 2 hours. We've had lawmakers, we have borrowers, we've had advocates. All of us have played a role in it. It's been an incredible 10 years and an incredible week of wins, and we'll continue to fight. So with that, after today's event, everyone who attended or registered will get a link to the recorded version, and we'll share resources. And like Natalia said, stay tuned. We will be hosting more events to try to add more clarity to what this news means.